This is Liberty Under Attack Radio, hosted by Shane and Matt, your place for documented truth and where freedom is the only agenda. We must end the terror war.
Good evening, and welcome to Liberty Under Attack Radio. This is Matt. On this May 3rd, 2015 edition, I'll be finishing off my portion on depopulation, which Shane started last Sunday. Hopefully with enough time left over. We'll take callers after the final break. The number is 218-895-3818. Tonight, I will start by sharing some key quotes from Stephen Graham's Cities Under Siege, and show some examples of the effects depleted uranium has environmentally damaged environments and people. I will also address Washington's stratagem of using Sunni geopolitical pawns to target Shiites, enforcing the death and destruction we're all aware of throughout the Middle East. This nasty, stupid, ugly, monstrous effect of the terror industrial complex must be stopped for the preservation of lives across the world. Last but not least, I'll describe the dangers of a military strike on Iran's nuclear facilities and how that impacts the Gulf states and, consequently, even the world populace. If anyone is interested in my blog, please go to endtheterrorwar.tumblr.com. Let us begin. Cities Under Siege, page 20. Quote, the U.S. military's focus on operations within the domestic urban sphere is being dramatically strengthened by the war on terror, which designates cities, whether U.S. or foreign, and their key infrastructures as battle spaces. Viewed through such a lens, the Los Angeles riots of 1992, the various attempts to securitize urban cores during major sports events or political summits, the military response to Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans in 2005, the challenges of homeland security in U.S. cities all become low-intensity urban military operations comparable to conducting counterinsurgency warfare in an Iraqi city. High-tech targeting practices such as unmanned drones and organized satellite surveillance programs, previously used to target spaces beyond the nation to purportedly make the nation safe, are beginning to colonize the domestic spaces of the nation itself. Military doctrine has come to treat the operation of gangs within U.S. cities as urban insurgency, fourth-generation warfare, or net war, directly analogous to what takes place in the streets of Kabul or Baghdad. Cities Under Siege, pages 58 and 59. Quote, a discursive trick early in the Iraq War was to construe certain high symbolic Iraq cities as dehumanized terror cities, nest-like environments whose very geography was seen as undermining the high-tech omnipotence of U.S. forces. For example, as a major battle raged in Fallujah in April 2004, when more than 600 Iraqi civilians died, General Richard Myers, chair of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, perhaps unwittingly following Israeli military descriptions of Palestinian cities, labeled the whole of the city a dehumanized rat's nest or hornet's nest of terrorist resistance against U.S. occupation that needed to be dealt with. The rhetoric of the war on terror has been sufficiently diffused that virtually any political opposition to the power of the U.S. and its allies can be labeled as terrorists. Jean Bouldrad argues that the system takes as objectively terrorist whatever is set against it. Those frequently labeled as terrorists by national governments or sympathetic media since 9/11 include anti-war dissidents, striking dock workers, anti-globalization protesters, campaigns against the arms trade, computer hackers, artists, critical researchers, urban sociologists, advocates for ecological sustainability and freedom of speech, and pro-independence campaigners within U.S. allies such as Indonesia, protagonists of a wide spectrum of opposition to transnational U.S. dominance. Almost any large group that assembles in a city street and is not preoccupied with consumption has been demonized. Focusing on depleted uranium. This is from Wikipedia's article, Environmental Impacts of War, DU Munitions. Quote, the use of depleted uranium in munitions is controversial because of numerous questions about potential long-term health effects. Normal functioning of the kidney, brain, liver, heart, and numerous other systems can be affected by uranium exposure because, in addition to being weakly radioactive, uranium is a toxic metal. It remains weakly radioactive because of its long half-life. The aerosol produced during impact and combustion of depleted uranium munitions can potentially contaminate wide areas around the impact sites, or can be inhaled by civilians and military personnel. In a 3-week period of conflict in Iraq during 2003, it was estimated that over 1,000 tons of depleted uranium munitions were used, mostly in cities. The U.S. Department of Defense claims that no human cancer of any type has been seen as a result of exposure to either natural or depleted uranium. Yet, U.S. Department of Defense studies using culture cells and laboratory rodents continue to suggest the possibility of leukemogenic, reproductive, and neurological effects from chronic exposure. In addition, the UK Pensions Appeal Tribunal Service in early 2004 attributed birth defect claims from a February 1991 Gulf War combat veteran to depleted uranium poisoning. Also, a 2005 epidemiology review concluded, quote, in aggregate, the human epidemiological evidence is consistent with increased risk of birth defects in offspring of persons exposed to DU. DU armaments have been deployed in the Balkans and Middle East, a depopulationist experiment on European and Arab states that have been reused globally. Next, focusing on the Sunni-Shiite conflict. Abduz Sattar Ghazali, in a December 2004 article titled New RAND Study, suggests exploiting Sunni, Shia, and Arab, non-Arab divides to promote U.S. policy. On the website, The American Muslim says, quote, a new RAND Corporation study suggests that Sunni, Shiite, and Arab, non-Arab divides should be exploited to promote U.S. policy objectives in the Muslim world. The recently released RAND study, titled U.S. Strategy in the Muslim World After 9/11, was conducted on behalf of the U.S. Air Force. One of the primary objectives of the study was to identify the key cleavages and fault lines among sectarian, ethnic, regional, and national lines, and to assess how these cleavages generate challenges and opportunities for the United States. Mahdi Darius Nazemroya, in his article titled A NATO for the Middle East, Israel and the Frontline Arab States Join Hands, from October 2009. Quote, the logistical process of marshaling together the network of existing U.S. allies and clients in the Middle East within an alliance against Iran and Syria started in 2006 after the Israeli defeat in Lebanon. Following the Israeli failure in Lebanon, the U.S. government started arming Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf Cooperation Council states, or GCC, Egypt, Jordan, Israel, the forces of Mahmoud Abbas, and the groups with militias in the March 14 alliance of Lebanon, with secret weapon shipments or through large weapon deals. These players were all grouped together, along with Israel and Turkey, as the coalition of the moderate. The so-called moderates, such as Saudi Arabia in the Middle East, are those players who sided with the plans to establish a new regional order, or the new Middle East. The so-called radicals are really those players resisting foreign influence and control for their own different reasons over their lands, and thus are a loose-knit resistance bloc. For this reason, a diverse league of players are included in the resistance bloc: theocrats and secularists, Arabs, Armenians, Assyrians, Turkic peoples, and Iranians, Christians of various confessions, from the Eastern Orthodox to various Catholics, Druze, and Muslims of various denominations, nationalists and pan-Arabists, reformists, liberals, and conservatives, Baathists, socialists, communists, and various religious political groups. The Iraqi resistance, most Palestinian organizations, the Lebanese national opposition, Iran, and Syria are all categorized together within this bloc of players, opposed to the agenda being pursued by America and its partners. This grouping is significantly propped up by Iran, either directly or indirectly. By way of their opposition to the U.S. and its allies, they are preventing the move into Eurasia and hegemonic control of Middle Eastern oil resources. Now we will examine maps of depopulation and depleted uranium throughout the world. The first image for everyone listening and on the live stream is an airflow chart of the world that stretches from Western Europe to Japan. The potential for radioactive particles to expand follows along with uranium-based attacks that permeate soil, groundwater, and the air itself. These streams of air can, if they haven't already, find themselves into places like South and North America, as well as our northern neighbor Canada. Nobody is safe from this toxic hellstorm, brought to you courtesy of the war-hungry depopulationist Washington Consensus. The picture is dated 2010 and still remains relevant. If our listeners would like to see this image themselves, please go to eyerinternational.wordpress.com. That's eyerinternational.wordpress.com. And look for an image called Contamination Map. It's a JPEG photo. The second image for folks listening and on the live stream, we have a map of Australia and some neighboring isles. The use of uranium weapons on the continent's bombing ranges also affects the airflow, again not guaranteeing safety for countries in the Western Hemisphere like America, Canada, or South American peoples. The bombing ranges identified on this map are located north, west, and east, respectively. Even Australia's capital, Canberra, isn't immune from this problem. I'm not saying this to scare anybody, just to spread awareness. We are not here for scare tactics at Liberty Under Attack. If you'd like to see the photo yourselves, please go to bibliocaltabales.net and look for an image titled Uranium-1802. That's bibliocaltabales.net, Uranium-18_02. The third picture for everybody listening and on live stream is disconcerting, if we have any listeners from the Balkans. The main focus is on Kosovo, and I guesstimate that there are about 25 or maybe 35 sites of depleted uranium ordnance identified, also a few in nearby Serbia. These sites are reportedly from the 1999 conflict, but depleted uranium, if it had conscience, wouldn't be bothered by the subsequent 24 years into the present. The organization who made this image is the UNEP, or the United Nations Environmental Program. You can find this photo at the French website mondaydiplo.com under the title Arton 2045.